This is the third time it has gone to the southern part of the city of Badu, a place he believes holds the location of a golden trail. However, while digging, he was bitten by a snake. He tried to get back to his cabin to call a doctor, but his phone fell into the hole. Upon arriving at his cabin, he began to feel sick and lost consciousness. After a few hours, he woke up to find his hand was very swollen. A few days later, he woke up to find himself miraculously healed. After walking to his car, he saw that it was covered in thick dust, as if it had been parked for a very long time. Upon returning to San Francisco, it discovered the city was deserted. He tried to find out what happened, eventually finding a message announcing that the government had closed all shelters due to a viral pandemic. It then realized that all this had happened while he was asleep. He quickly drove to his parents' house. When he arrived, he found that his family had fallen victim to the pandemic. It buried them in the backyard. The next morning, it decided to go to a church. He found many people gathered there. After that, he went to a supermarket to gather supplies. However, he found the bridge was closed and impassable. The only way out was to drive. He drove non-stop until he reached Los Angeles, which had also become a ghost town. After a dip in a swimming pool, it decided to go to a bar and was surprised to meet Minton and Anna, whom he never expected to have survived. They showed him a video explaining the virus outbreak that had killed millions of people. A few days earlier, Minton and Anna had met at that hotel, and since then, they had spent their time drinking to forget their suffering. The next morning, it said he had to go and find other survivors. He also told them that the hotel's generator would only last a few more weeks and that when the power went out, it would all be over. It asked why Minton and Anna weren't trying to find a new way to survive in the outside world. A few months later, Emma tried to maintain a balanced diet, they no longer one day she wanted to eat meat. When it realized that they truly intended to die in that hotel, she decided to leave her family and drove away with no destination. It used the guide in the book to cut the meat correctly. It slammed on the gas after cutting it suddenly when he returned home and successfully installed the solar panel. He decided to take it in and named it Lucky. Mice began to multiply. After getting lucky that they began to take over the streets of San Francisco, stopped at a library. One night, he picked out some books to read and learn approaching the house. Not knowing what his future would hold, they immediately went outside to clean up to spend the rest of his life back at his parents' house with Lucky. When they burned the garbage, for the past year, the carcass from their hunt trying his best to survive. The smell of rotten meat attracted was one of the cruelest punishments. Their plan did not go as hoped. While looking at the horizon, tried to get saw smoke coming out of the chimney of the house. Went back into the house this and gave him hope to seal all the doors and windows to the house and met Emma from entering. When Emma saw him, however, she was surprised and grabbed a pistol. His dog was outside. After seeing that it was not dangerous, the door to she invited him into the house. As soon as the door opened, she had just arrived a few days ago into the house. She was from San Francisco the whole night and invited him to stay at her house. After that, he helped Emma treat Lucky's instead of leaving as usual. The dog helped Emma move to his house so they could help each other and become rats friends. Were controlled by cats. After that, as cats were better able to adapt to survival than dogs. From the ceiling because he had now found someone and began to find even without medical assistance. They managed to give around without any problems. Emma found the house was full of mice. After the apocalypse, it was then driving her to the nearest supermarket to buy rat poison. He accidentally hit an animal on the road. Store. When he got out separately, he found a little girl named Evie. The store. Emma was shocked to see a sad and tried to run away. Although she had been convinced many that he wanted to help, she was still not used to such a sight. Had no place to live. A few days later, stay with them. They, as he lived began with his wife and two children, each other as if they had been together for a long time. Instead of coming along, excited to build a new family with Emma. It went to look when for a solar panel to the car. Their house could have electricity. Followed him and hid in the back of the pickup on the truck. Way, he had an accident when he got and broke his leg. He introduced Evie to his family. Emma took care of silent and did not speak. The closeness that developed caused them to fall in love. Time to adjust. Time passed. At that and time, Emma became pregnant. Had gathered two other survivors. It was unsure if he could take good care of Emma and their child. Moran brought nevertheless, but Evie would not come near. The next morning, it went to the library to find a book on childbirth. as they would not have a doctor or hospital to help this new guest. Meanwhile, Ith and Hockey went hunting and came to the cabin where Evie and her family had once lived. Although they did not know for sure what had happened to her family, they knew that something bad had happened there. When they got home, they read a letter that Moran had found in the girl's bag, but Evie remained silent due to the trauma of her experience. They accepted her as a new member to give her a chance to have a happy childhood. A few weeks later, Emma's third child was born, which made both of them very happy. About a year later, as the children were playing in the garden, Ith heard a sound approaching. He took out his pistol. Meanwhile, Emma and Hockey went to check and found Molly's family. Molly said she saw a message that Ith and Emma had written on a wall about 7 years ago, which informed them of the existence of other survivors, and that brought them to this place. After they finished eating, Moran and Hockey suggested there was an empty house nearby if Molly's family was interested in staying. However, Ith did not agree with the idea and told his wife that he did not trust them and suspected they might have bad intentions. Although Ith was still hesitant, Emma persuaded him to give the newcomers a chance. When Ith went to get supplies, Molly went into the empty hospital and took everything she could carry. Over time, Ith began to trust them, and Jean, one of the new family members, became pregnant. Their family grew even larger. She was cared for and helped completely by her new friends. Not long after that, Moran gave birth to his first child, which made Hockey very excited to be a father. The three families began to form a small community and held a 13th birthday party for Ether, its eldest daughter. However, on that day, there was a big storm, and Ether realized Lucky was not at home. Worried about his dog, Ith went to look for him in the rain and found Lucky dead. Before burying his body, he saw a tiger walking towards his children. He charged and fought the tiger to protect the children. Evie, who saw it, screamed, and it was the first time she had spoken in years. Her cry for help made the others rush to the scene just in time. Meanwhile, Emma decided to hunt the tiger herself and succeeded in killing it. A few weeks later, Ith began to recover from the tiger attack. Over time, Heather and Jean's son grew up and decided to go and see the world outside of San Francisco. They both said they would return before winter. After saying goodbye to their families, they left. A few weeks later, its small community faced a drought. He went to the reservoir to check, but on the way, he met a trailer truck full of survivors. Ith immediately drove back home quickly. Because he was scared, Ith did not really trust these strangers, but Charlie, one of the refugees, came to introduce himself and asked to stay. Emma welcomed them and invited them to eat. While chatting, Charlie said he had a drilling machine and was willing to help them dig a well. Charlie and his team worked hard to find a water source in exchange for Ith helping them find fuel. However, Ith began to feel strange activity in the group of newcomers and suspected they might have a plan to take over the town. He told Emma about his concerns, but his wife scolded him and said he had to learn to trust other people more. To stop his negative thoughts, Ith decided to walk alone into the forest. When Emma was preparing to look for him, Ith returned, and Emma began to think that her husband might be right about Charlie's strange behavior. The next morning, the group of men continued to dig the well. After working for a few days, they successfully dug the well. However, Charlie had no intention of leaving, as he wanted to take over the place. That night, after the celebration was over, he tried to attack Evie. But when Ith heard Evie's scream, he immediately went in to help her and saw what was happening. He told them all to leave, but they refused. Suddenly, Emma appeared with a pistol and threatened to shoot. But Charlie mocked them. Ith, who saw this, became angry and hit him with a hammer until he died. The next morning, Ith and Emma told the others about the incident and gave them a choice to either continue working together or leave. It turned out that everyone knew Charlie was a bad person, so they had no problem with what happened to him. After being kicked out of the community, Silas, Charlie's friend, left peacefully. But suddenly he came back and asked to rejoin, but it refused because he knew Silas was Charlie's accomplice. 3 years passed. When everything seemed fine, Joey, Ith and Emma's youngest son, showed strange symptoms. It was the same disease that had almost wiped out humanity before. Not long after that incident, the disease spread to other members of the community. Despite having to face the suffering of seeing his son sick, Ith was happy to see Heather return home safely. However, Rat, her travel companion, died on the way home. Hearing this, Ith began to think that they were facing bad things because they were being punished for killing Charlie. To find a cure for his friends and family, Ith decided to ride a bicycle across the bridge and into an empty hospital to look for medicine. Before leaving, Ith stopped at a church and prayed to be forgiven for what he had done. Although he was guilty, he felt his children should not have to suffer the consequences. So, he asked God to take him in exchange for the sick Joey. Elsewhere, Jean asked what happened to her son, Rat. Heather explained that in the middle of their journey, they saw a red painted arrow. She and Rat began to feel that the journey to find other people had led them too far from their original goal. They agreed to return home. However, before returning, they camped on a hilltop. Then, a robber came to steal all their food. Seeing that the robber was ready to hurt them, Rat tried to defend himself. Seeing this, Heather became very angry and threw an axe at the robber. After the robber died, she tried to stop Rat's bleeding, but Rat had already lost a lot of blood. Before he died, Rat described the robber's body shape, and they realized that the person was Silas. At the same time, Ith did everything he could to help his son, Joey. Everyone in the infected camp began to recover, except for Joey, whose condition worsened every day. Finally, Joey died. On the other hand, Eve went to the library and began to destroy everything that got in her way. Emma tried to comfort her until Eve could get past this pain. One day, while walking alone, she stood watching the sunset and realized that her hope had been fulfilled. The world was recovering. 1 year after losing his son, Ith found Joey's old diary. In it, Joey noted all of his genius. Although he never had the chance to go to college, he managed to design a prototype of a radio